protest, but it's right across Northern Ireland. This time last week, as an institution, we celebrated the 324th anniversary of the Battle of the Boyne. And once again, Orangeism demonstrated its continuing relevance and appeal, illustrated by the huge number of people who attended the various 12th demonstrations. And it's not just that, by the way, you may or may not know this, but every year, the daytime coverage of the 12th are the biggest daytime viewing figures in Northern Ireland every year. Possibly the biggest, if you take it as a percentage of the population per region, possibly the biggest viewing figures throughout the United Kingdom. The Grand Master's already expressed his appreciation to the Orange and Unionist family for their show of support. He also praised the organisation capabilities of the institution as we peacefully demonstrated our opposition to the shambolic Parades Commission and the ongoing demonisation by Republicans of our traditions and our identity. Today, I would like to publicly thank everyone who was involved in the management of the parades last week. There were about 700 parades last week. That's a lot of parades. And there were people involved in the management of those, in the preparation beforehand, but also in the day. So on top of our normal about 600 parades in the 12th, there were upwards of 60 protest parades. And so I would like to express my thanks, probably also my admiration of the people who were involved in organising and managing them. Because I don't believe actually that there's an organisation in this country that could organise that many parades with that many people out in the streets on one day, and there's not a bottle thrown, there's not a brick thrown, there was no disorder whatsoever. The fact that all of these protests were peaceful demonstrates a quiet determination and long-term resolve, which I think is much more effective than scenes of disorder, and at the end of the day those scenes of disorder are craved by our opponents, and we were able to deny them that. On the 12th evening, the institution held around 60 protests in towns and villages right across Northern Ireland. I was at one, Dromore, County Down. The turnout was far more than what we expected. Almost every member of the institution and many members of the public and bands in our district came to that protest. And the same, it was like that largely across Northern Ireland, particularly in County Down. I'm only aware of my own county so far, but Kilkeel, maybe some of the people on the platform party here could show you the photograph from Kilkeel, how enormous the parade was in Kilkeel, the protest parade that night. The widespread nature of these demonstrations and the large turnout was a visible and impressive show of support and solidarity with the brethren here at Ligoneel, but also at Drumcree, Magherafelt, Dunloy, Rasharkin, Newton Butler, and 20 or 30 other places around the province, and an indication of the strength of feeling against the Parades Commission. And I want to say this, no one should doubt this institution's determination to have this law amended. It's called the Public Processions Act 1998. No one should doubt our determination to have that amended. And I do think that we're slowly convincing those that need to be convinced that law needs to be changed. Further initiatives in our campaign to make Northern Ireland a better place by getting rid of the Parades Commission will be unveiled in due course. And I think there should be no mistake that there's, to those in authority, that there's a unity of purpose amongst the Protestant, Unionist, Loyalist population to have this bad law fixed. I want to say also, I've been Grand Secretary for 8 years, and we've had the Parades Commission and the removal of it is number one priority in the things that I seek to do. It has been for 8 years. And there are lots of other things. There's 24 things in that list actually. things that I try to do with the institution. Consistently, the message from the government has been, get it agreed with the nationalist community, the Republican community, and we legislate for it. Now, we've had 2 or 3 goes at that, and I think that we've come to the end of that path. And I think now that we need to be persuading the government, and what they need to do is this: they need to recognise that when this legislation was brought in 1998, was part of the settlement that happened then, but it was imposed on us. There was no unionist veto for the Party Processions Act. Government didn't come at that time and say, look, agree between the 2 communities how you're going to manage parades, how you're going to regulate them, we legislate for it. They imposed that on our community. Now, it is unfair and it taints democracy that the government now say the nationalists, the Republican community, have now got a veto on any changes to that, even though the unionist community didn't have a veto when it was brought in. And I think the government, we have maybe some way to go to persuade them of that, but that should be the centre of our campaign over the next few months, to persuade the government that this unfair legislation, it is their responsibility to change it. It's Westminster legislation, it's not a transferred matter. The control of it resides with the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State needs to show some leadership here. She asked this institution to show leadership over the 12th. We did show that. Now she needs to show some leadership, and she needs to review this legislation, and with it, and the outcome of that review should be an amendment to the Party Processions Act that will create a fairer playing field, a leveler playing field in the regulation of parades. I want to say something else just when I'm here, and then I'll close with that. One of the things that I have learnt over the few years that I've been Grand Secretary and lobbying all the time to get things that we want done for the institution is the importance of politics. Politics are very, very important. Politicians have the power to make changes, and the political system's got the power to make changes, and it's really important, and it's something I think as a community that perhaps we haven't used as efficiently as we could have done in the past. And by that I mean to use the democratic political system, and that's really important, and I've learnt lessons about doing that over the years. So I'll finish there. Grandmaster, County Grandmaster, and brethren and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here. I promise you now that there will be an increasing campaign, which will be a visible protest campaign over the next few months in Northern Ireland. And so I'm saying this publicly because those in authority need to be assured of our resolve to address this issue, and those in authority need to address it. I pass on again my thanks. I think thanks is a good word for it. My thanks to the brethren from Ligoneel and the people who have been involved up here for standing so resolutely for what is right in Northern Ireland, because there's a point of principle here, and sometimes they stand for that point of principle in the face of very adverse and unfair and sometimes I think biased criticism in the press, who are all too willing to print an easy line for a good headline, but are not prepared, most of them not prepared to come and to listen in detail to both sides of what's happening. So I pass on my thanks, particularly to the Ligoneel brethren, for standing here on this point of principle, which I believe is the right principle. And of course, our message, as always, to those in authority, to the Parades Commission, although I think they're becoming increasingly irrelevant, but to the Secretary of State, wherein the power lies for this man. She can't do it tomorrow, but she can do it. She can't do it next week, but she can do it over a number of months. My message to her is to create the conditions, to create the changes that are necessary to let these brethren home. Thank you.